Hi guys, welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we'll be running through step by step how to create your own snuggle sacks for your guinea pigs or any other small pets that might use them for that matter. Now I am super excited to be finally sharing this tutorial with you. It is the third in this series and I'll pop the links to the previous two, which are the Cuddle Cup and the Heidi Hut, down in the description below. But if you're here for the first time, then this is as good a place as any to start making your own guinea pig cozy beds. The snuggle sack has to be one of the staples in any guinea pig cage, and it is a favourite bed of many piggies, including shy, timid piggies, because the sacks offer a sheltered, cozy place where our pigs naturally feel safe and protected. And I will be making one the same as this with two different entrances, as well as one with just a single entrance. So you can see how both options are made and you can pick how you want to design your own snuggle sacks. And just like the other tutorials, if you're interested in getting the exact same pattern that I'll be using, along with a detailed set of written instructions, then this is now available in my Etsy shop linked below. However, you can still follow these video instructions for a cutout pattern that you have designed and made yourself. Okay, so before we get started, let's have a quick look at the equipment you'll need. So I do recommend a sewing machine just because it will drastically speed things up for you, but if you want to hand sew the snuggle sacks, then you can do. As for the other equipment, you'll need a printer, scissors and tape to print and assemble your pattern, and for sewing, you'll need sharp fabric scissors, pins, polyester or cotton thread, and a hand sewing needle. And for this tutorial, we have the option of using this stuff, which is boning. Now it isn't completely necessary, but if you choose to use it, it will help your entrances stay open. Okay, let's get started with step one, which is choosing and preparing your fabrics. Now the snuggle sacks are made using three main layers of fabric. First of all, we have the outer layer, which is the usually decorative material you'll see on the outside of the sack. And for this, I'll be using these two gorgeous quilting weight cottons. Our next layer is the lining layer, and this is what you'll see on the inside of the sack, and it should be fleece. Fleece will wick away moisture while staying nice and cozy and dry, feeling against your piggy's feet. And thirdly, we have the filler layer, which is polyester batting or wadding sandwiched between the outer and the lining layers. Polyester batting comes in different sizes, and I'll be using 6 ounce for my sacks. As for preparing these materials, the polyester wadding is good to go as it is, but you'll need to pre-wash any cotton fabrics, and usually you'll have to pre-wash the fleece as well to stop it from repelling water. With our fabrics ready, step 2 is preparing your pattern. If you're using the printable pattern, then go ahead and print the pages actual size onto normal A4 paper, and after printing, cut around the outer thick black line on each page. Then you just need to stick the pieces together, covering over the flaps marked "Cover Me Over" in the order indicated. Once you've done that, your pattern should look something like this. And this is where you have a choice to make on whether you want to start off by making a sack with just one entrance, option 1, or whether you want to go for 2 entrances, which is option 2. Now obviously one entrance is slightly less work, so might be a better place to start. However, if you really like the look of 2 entrances on either side and the tunnel vibes it gives, then go for it. It will just take a little bit longer, but it's no more difficult than option 1. So for one entrance, cut your assembled pattern along the curved option 1 line. For option 2, just leave your assembled pattern as it is, one big rectangle. Next up is using the pattern to cut out our fabrics. For both options, the snuggle sacks are made up of 6 pieces of fabric in total, 2 each of the outer, middle and lining fabrics. So starting off with our fleece lining layer, just lay the entire pattern piece down on the flat fleece and carefully pin around the edges and cut around it. Next up, for our middle layers, we're not going to use the whole pattern. This is where those dashed fold lines come in. We're going to fold the pattern along where it says fold line for cutting middle layer. You'll notice that option 1 only has 1 fold line, whereas option 2 has 2 fold lines, 1 at each end, so fold along both of these. Once you've folded the pattern, cut 2 middle pieces out, which will be slightly shorter than your lining pieces. Finally, for our outer layer, I think you know where this is going now, we're going to fold the pattern piece again on the dashed lines marked fold line for cutting outer layer. Again, only one of these lines exists for option 1, whereas there are 2 for option 2, and you should fold along both of them. Cut out 2 pieces of your outer fabric and you'll end up with the 3 sets of different length layers. And now it's finally time for some sewing. So in this step, we create the main side seam of the snuggle sack. To start with, I'm laying down one of my outer layers right side facing up. The right side is the side we want to face out in the finished sack. Then I'm laying the second outer layer right side down on top of it. This is for the option 2 sack with 2 entrances, so I'm only going to pin along the opposite side edges. If you were working with option 1, you'd pin right the way along and around the curved edge. Next up, just sew where you have pinned, either on the machine or by hand. At this stage, you'll either have one of these if you're working with the single entrance option 1, or one of these if you're working with option 2. Whichever one it is, put your outer layers to one side and grab your lining and middle layers. We're going to make the exact same seam but with these layers next. So to start with, lay one of your middle layers down, facing either way round is fine, and then on top, put one of your 2 lining layers right side facing up. Now for fleece, the right side is the side we want to be visible inside the sack. And the right side is often a little bit fluffier than the wrong side, but they aren't always easy to tell apart. Next up, I'm laying my other lining layer right side facing down. Now you'll notice that when I'm putting these layers down, I'm being careful to line them up equally. So I've got the same amount of fleece hanging over at both ends here. And when I put the second layer of fleece on top, I'm trying to line it up so it's sat on the other one perfectly. And then on goes the last middle layer like that. Again, leaving the same amount of fleece poking out. Now I'm just going to pin and sew along these 2 opposite side edges, just like I did for the outer layers. And if you're working with option 1, just make sure all 4 layers are lined up with each other along the curved edge. Pin right the way around the curved edge again to create this seam. So once you've done these seams, you are left with quite a bulky seam allowance here. So what I like to do is cut this right back to around 1/2 centimetre or just under 1/4 of an inch. And that will help keep things neat and lined up in the finished bed. Moving on to step 5, and there's actually no sewing in this step. All we're doing is combining our 2 pieces that we've just sewn. If you're going for option 1 with the curved pieces, just turn your outer one inside out so the right side is facing out. And then take your other piece, stick your hand inside it like this, so you're wearing it like a big oven mitt, and then put it inside the outer piece, lining up the side seams and getting it nice and snug in there with no bagginess around the curved edge. Once you're happy with that, we want to make sure there is an even amount of wadding on show across the top edge. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be roughly the same length from one side to the other. And if it's not, you can reposition your outer layer to fix it. For option 2, we're just doing the exact same thing, but with both edges on either side to line up. So again, turn the outer piece inside out, and obviously it's like a little tube. So with the other piece, we are not going to do anything with it, just going to kind of grab onto it like this, and then stick it through here, and then just line up those side seams, making all 3 layers lay flat nicely with no bunching up anywhere. Then look at the wadding poking out and make sure the same amount is at both sides and it is even all the way across each side. Adjust the position of your outer layer until you have both sides matching. So the next 2 steps are basically how to make an entrance with boning and without boning, and both are possible whichever option you're following here. So you could have one entrance with boning, or one entrance with no boning, or 2 entrances with boning, or 2 entrances with no boning, or you could have one with boning and one without boning. It's totally up to you to decide, so I'm going to stop referring to option 1 and option 2. And for me, I quite like the idea of having different style entrances, so I'm going to do one of each on here, that way you can see how they are both made. This step is how to create an entrance with boning. So first of all, take out your boning and cut off a length measuring 38 centimeters. I'm going to make a kind of fleece cushioning for this boning so it feels less pokey. And to do that, I'm going to roughly cut off a spare bit of fleece, a bit bigger than my boning, fold it up one way like this and back down again before popping a pin in. Now I'm going to do this right the way along the length of the boning to effectively encase it in fleece. And this is just my method. Ultimately, this is inside of the bed and you don't see it, so you can do whatever works for you to cushion the boning. And on the machine, I'm going to sew along where I've pinned, so now this boning is ready to form part of my entrance. Back to my snuggle sack, and I'm just going to pop in a couple of pins to help hold these layers of material in place whilst I work on one of my two entrances. Next up, take your fleecy boning and place it on the exposed bit of wadding just above where the outer fabric edge is. Make sure it's in the center with a similar length hanging over at each end. And holding that in place, we're going to fold the wadding down over the boning and pop a pin in there to secure it. Using that pin as a guide, fold the rest of the wadding layer over the top of the boning, and when you get to the edges, fold the wadding over on the bottom half of the sack as well, but don't touch the fleece lining layer just yet. Pop in some more pins to hold this boning and wadding in place, and then hand sew where you have pinned. This really doesn't have to be neat at all, it's not going to be seen. Just try and capture the fleece around the boning and the folded over wadding with your stitches, getting as close as you can to the side seams. And remember to remove your pins afterwards. Next up, we fold the fleece over and tuck it under itself to form a neat folded edge. Start by folding the fleece all over roughly, and then at one of the side seams, stretch it out so it isn't bunching up, and carefully roll it under itself using your thumbs. This rolled under edge is going to be stitched down, so you want to tuck under enough so it won't come loose, and you also want to make sure that the edge is still overhanging the edge of your outer fabric, in my case the cotton, by at least 1 centimetre or ½ an inch, so there's no risk of it coming loose from underneath. I usually spend quite a while rolling the fleece under itself until I'm happy that it is even the entire way round. And if your outer material has a pattern on it, try to line up the edge of the fleece with this so the pattern doesn't look wonky. As you go, start putting in your pins until you've pinned all the way around the edge. Now all that's left to do is sew neatly along where you've pinned. Try to keep a small but consistent distance from the very edge. It might not be that neat at first, but you'll soon get the hang of it. And with that, one of our entrances is done. You can really see how the boning holds it up so it's nice and springy like that, and if you give it a good feel round here, there's no kind of sharp or pokey bits, so that little fleece pocket that we made is really working to keep it nice and cushioned. And I did also go ahead and do the entrance in the other sack just the same as that, so as you can see, this is the finished sack if you just want the one entrance. So yeah, very pleased with that. If you got to this point, then well done. Obviously you might want to go on and make a sack with 2 entrances, so let's find out how we do the other entrance style. The alternative entrance is without boning. So this time I'm going to fold over the wadding all the way around by a roughly equal amount, so it just overlaps the raw edge of the outer layer. Then I'm just going straight to folding the fleece over the top. And just like I did before, I'm going to roll it back under itself to create a neat edge, which overlaps the edge of the outer layer. Start with a few pins at the side seams and then join them up along either side. Then just like in step 6, you can go ahead and sew around this pinned edge carefully on the machine. And this is the snuggle sack all finished. On this side we've got the new flat entrance, which as you can see doesn't have any boning in, but it's still really cushioned and thick, so I can definitely imagine guinea pigs nudging their way in there and then using the whole thing as a big tunnel, and I could just picture them getting excited and popcorning around there. And if you're following along and got to the end with me, then a big well done. I hope the options and the entrance variations didn't confuse things too much. I just really wanted to add some extra choices over what would be a relatively simple project. But for now, let's see what the girls think of their new snuggle sacks. Hey piggies, got something new to have a look at. Oh, here. Zero reaction. Oh, what's that? Does it smell all new and weird? Go on. That was cool. Going back in, that's always a good sign. Exciting. Phoebe's on the lookout now. They really seem to be enjoying these, so before I put them back in the cage and leave them to it, I just wanted to say a massive thank you for watching and for your support. Anyone who buys a pattern, thank you so much. You are helping to support me and the channel and the piggies, of course. And if you've got the bug for making your own piggy cozy items and you want something a little bit more challenging, then I will pop up the Heidi Hut tutorial for you to watch next. Okay guys, as always, thank you so much for watching and we will see you in the next one. Bye bye!